Hello, Aubrey. How's it going?
I'm great, Jessica. How are you this fine morning?
Good.
It's actually afternoon now that I think about it.
Yeah, I'm laughing because we actually had to start this episode over because my dog Dixie started barking. So that's all taken care of. No dogs shall interrupt this IELTS lesson, everyone.
Right. This is how much we care about you guys. We're not going to make you listen to dog barking. We're willing to do what it takes, right? To make this a really nice
Exact.
episode for you to listen to.
Whatever it takes. Whatever it takes, guys. Okay, today we are answering some burning questions about IELTS speaking. Um, a burning question. That is also great idiomatic vocabulary. So here's a little bonus tip for you guys. How can we use this burning question phrase on IELTS? First of all, what does that even mean?
Yeah, this is really high level and impressive. It's very idiomatic for a question to be burning, and it means it's important. It's serious, right? This is not going to be about trivial things if you have a burning question. It's something you've been thinking a lot about or that matters a lot to you.
Exactly. So you can use it in writing task 2, for example, to introduce the topic because most of the time, right, the topics are serious. They're important. It's about education, the environment, society, culture, right? So you could say something like, um, the fallibility, now that means like faultiness, right?
Mm.
Erroneousness, is that a word?
Mhm.
The fallibility of children's education has been a burning question on the minds of parents and educators alike. It
Yeah.
just means, right? They're thinking about this a lot.
I love this as a way to start your task 2 essay because most of the topics you're asked about for writing task 2 are about burning questions for people, right? They're
Totally.
usually important topics that there are two sides of the issue. People debate them, right? So often you're going to be able to use this phrase to introduce a topic that people care about.
And since today we're talking about speaking, I think you can also use it in speaking part 3. I like the idea of using it to introduce a topic that's not so important and using it in the negative. So, because the topics can be kind of
Mm.
silly, on the speaking exam. And what if the speaking examiner asks you, like, let's see, do you think airline travel might disappear in the future? You could say, like, well, I honestly don't think this is like a burning question on anyone's mind because that won't happen. I mean,
Mhm.
then you could explain why that's your opinion.
Yeah, that's a great way to use it too, to say, "This has never been a burning question for me,
Right?
but I'll answer," right? That's a good way of saying,
Totally.
like, "That's an interesting question that no one really cares about."
That's so good. All right, guys. So today we're answering 3 questions that we got from Spotify reviews. Thank you, first of all, for leaving those reviews. And guys, if you are learning anything at all from us on the IELTS Energy podcast, please rate and review us wherever you're listening on Spotify or Apple, for example, and include a question. We might answer it in a future episode.
Yes, we love those reviews, and it's a great way for others to be able to find us that are
Mhm.
practicing for the exam as well. So, yeah, leave us a review. And we also want to make sure that you guys did not miss just a couple of episodes again. I was able to interview Nick, and today we're talking about IELTS speaking. And if you want to get inspired, his story is amazing how he was able to increase his scores and score 7.5 on IELTS speaking. He shared a lot of great advice and strategies he used. So scroll up and make sure you listen to that episode if you missed it.
Awesome. Awesome. That's so cool. And remember, guys, hit follow right now so you never miss another episode. All right. So let's get into this first burning question. This was asked by Mikhail. Aubrey, can you read that, please?
Yes. Hello. Thanks for your podcast. Teachers encourage us to look straight into the eyes of an examiner. However, a person on YouTube argues that it is not a test of evaluating our communication. So
Nice.
this is an excellent question, sort of asking like, do we need to look into the eyes of the examiner or is that not affecting our score? And I know many of you out there listening may have had this question or thought of that because this
Yeah.
is common that some people have a harder time making eye contact when they speak, especially when you're trying to think of all the good vocabulary you need and
Yeah.
everything you need to say. That might be harder. That might affect your fluency.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, I did a YouTube video on this years ago, and the answer is no, it doesn't matter, right? You're not scored on the amount of eye contact that you make. When I was examining, I had candidates sometimes on the speaking test who could not make eye contact with me because of their culture or religious affiliations. If they were a man, they were uncomfortable making eye contact with me, a woman, which is totally fine. There is no decrease in score because of that. And so they would like stare at the desk, stare at the wall, just sort of look everywhere in the
Mhm.
room but me. And it was totally fine, right? I am not staring into their eyes just waiting for them to look at me. I'm using my ears, right? Speaking examiners, we don't use our eyes very much. We're looking at you, but we're also reading questions and looking at the timer. We are using our ears to evaluate you, okay? So
Right.
if you are uncomfortable making contact, if eye contact, if that ruins your fluency, don't do it.
Exactly, right? The examiner's listening for very specific things, and if you have if it's like, creating a division in your brain to, like, take the effort to make eye contact and also do all that you need to while
Yeah.
coming up with these answers, right? To have idiomatic language, high-level vocabulary, to use that varied intonation, then if one thing has to go, let it be the eye contact.
Yeah, totally.
Don't meet the eyes and make sure that you're focusing on what the examiner is actually listening for.
All right, let's get into this next question. Oh gosh, this is hard to say.
Pomemidov.
Pomemidov. Pomemidov. There's
I
a
love
lot of
when it's like a
M's.
YouTube name, like someone's
Oof.
online name or a Spotify name. We get these really interesting names, guys.
Because sometimes they're just like halves of other names put together
Totally.
and like it's okay. Anyway, but thank you for asking this question and leaving a review. So Pomemidov said, "Is it important to speak in part 2 until the examiner stops you?"
Yes, and the answer is yes,
Yes.
right? It's really tricky because you will hear the examiner say, to speak for 1 to 2 minutes, and that is a lie.
A
Ignore where they
lie.
say 1 minute. You really need to speak for that full 2 minutes.
Mhm.
If you stop before that, they may even sort of gesture with their hand like, "Keep going," because they really need you to speak for that full 2 minutes in order to show your fluency.
Yeah, examiners are required to encourage you to keep speaking. We're supposed to do it like non-verbally.
Mhm.
Because we're not supposed to say anything that's not on the script, right? Except for speaking part 3, where we can ask our own questions. But in speaking part 2, examiners are trained. If you stop speaking before the 2 minutes are up, you can see this on YouTube, guys. If you're watching us, the examiner will use their hand like this and like circle motions, like keep
Like,
going,
continue,
please.
keep speaking.
um, yeah, your fluency score will definitely be impacted if you speak for fewer than 2 minutes, especially if your fluency on the other two parts, part 1 and part 3, if your fluency on those two parts are not, is not amazing, then that
Mm.
could really hurt your score. Remember, your score is an average of all three parts. You're not graded on part 1, part 2, part 3 individually. However, not being able to speak for 2 minutes can definitely impact your fluency score.
And you don't wanna be so stressed about the timing. You definitely want to just plan on speaking until they stop you,
Yeah,
because if you're really trying to track, like, has it been 2 minutes so that I can stop right at 2 minutes? No, you don't want to spend any of your brain power on that, right? Be thinking about
exactly.
telling a story, adding more details, and just go until they say, "Thank you," and ask their next question.
Listen to our last episode from last Wednesday where I gave that sample part 2 answer, right? Just keep talking until the examiner stops you. You always want to have more than enough to say. All right, let's get to this last question from Estevany. Estevany asked, if we talk more than the time allowed, does that reduce our score or not? So let's take this part by part here. Now, what do you think that would mean for part 1? Is it possible to talk too much in part one?
No, it's really not because if you go on too long, the examiner will stop you every time and they'll
Mhm.
just ask the next question. And
Yeah,
if this happens every time, if you're not stopping yourself and you just add more detail and the examiner says that's not lowering your score. That's showing your fluency, no problem. Now,
exactly.
granted, one thing you want to really be careful of is not repeating yourself,
Right.
not just like sort of going on and on just to make the examiner have to stop you, right? Some
Yeah.
answers you'll have less to say, and that's
Yeah.
okay as long as you answer the question, say a couple of sentences. It's okay to stop talking, but it's impossible to take more time than is allowed because the examiner will stop you.
Exactly. Yeah. I think we talked about some advice related to this maybe last month on the show when a student asked like, do I have to speak for 1 minute for every part three answer? You know,
Mhm.
and it's really we want to discourage you from being so strict with yourself. Like I have to speak for 1 minute every time, or 30 seconds, or whatever the case may be. Like Aubrey said, some answers you're going to have a lot to say and some answers you'll just have a little bit to say. That's the nature of spontaneous spoken communication. Right?
Absolutely. You need to have that flexibility so
Yeah.
that if you do have more to say and really interesting details and vocabulary, yes, absolutely. Keep speaking until the examiner cuts you off. But if you don't have a ton to say about a question, you still need to make sure to answer it, but don't stress about needing to keep going, add more and more, because that's when you run the risk of repeating yourself
Right.
or having these pauses and hesitations while you think of something else. It's okay just to answer and then stop talking,
And just stop talking.
and then just stop
Exactly.
talking.
I do want to leave you guys with one last tip today. Do go back and listen to our episode with the sample part two answer. Aubrey, can you find that title real fast
Yes,
while
absolutely.
I share this tip? Because it is modeled in that episode. And I pretty sure I do this every time I give a speaking part two model answer on the show. Every time Aubrey stops me, I'm always, like, shocked, I'm always surprised, and I always say something like, "Oh, darn, I had so much more to say."
Yes, it
Um,
was episode 1318, Band
nice,
9 sample speaking answer about soccer, and that might have been
perfect,
part of it. You have a lot to say about soccer, right?
so
You could
much.
have spoken for hours.
So I encourage you guys to do that on your own speaking test, right? So hopefully you are practicing with the strategies we give you for speaking part two, developing a story, having so much detail to add that when the examiner does stop you, you're like, oh gosh darn it, I had so much more to say. Like that would be so awesome, guys, if you were able to communicate that. Just like I just did when the examiner stops you. That would be really awesome. The examiner would love it. Okay.
Yes.
All right, guys. Remember to hit follow right now so you never miss an IELTS Energy podcast episode. 2 new ones every single week.
Awesome. See you next time, Jessica.
Bye.
Bye, guys.